Welcome to today's video, where we delve into the darkest corners of the gaming industry and uncover the 9 worst AAA games ever released. With massive budgets, huge development teams and high expectations, these games should have been hits, but instead they failed spectacularly. Buckle up, because these titles prove what even the biggest publishers can make colossal mistakes. We start off with a game what should have been magical: Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Part 1. Which a franchise as beloved as Harry Potter and the enormous success of the movies and books, this game was expected to cast a spell on fans. But instead, it was a disaster. The game tried to be a third-person cover shooter in the vein of Gears of War, but with magic wands instead of guns. The controls were clunky, the cover system barely worked, and the spellcasting mechanics were uninspired. Players found themselves hiding behind invisible cover or simply running into battle without strategy, as the AI posed little threat. The stealth missions were particularly painful, as enemies had X-ray vision and could spot you through walls. Not to mention the game was riddled with bugs, what made progression frustrating. Even the upgrade system, which allowed you to unlock new spells, felt pointless since the game was so easy what most players never needed to bother. A disappointing title would tarnish the Harry Potter legacy in the gaming world. Next up is Alone in the Dark, a game that tried to reinvent the survival horror genre, but ended up being a confused mess. Developed by Eden Games, this 208 release was supposed to rival classics like Resident Evil with its innovative gameplay and dark narrative. But instead, it became infamous for its broken mechanics and bizarre design choices. One of the strangest features was the game's inventory system. Players had to rummage through a jacket pocket in real time to select items, which broke immersion and left players vulnerable to attacks. The melee combat was equally strange, forcing players to swing objects using clunky motion controls, resulting in frustrating, imprecise fights. The game also touted a realistic physics engine, but it often led to more chaos than creativity. As a result, Alone in the Dark was far from the next great survival horror game. It was a misstep into a dark, lonely void of missed potential. Third game is Redfall. Arcane Studios, known for its critically acclaimed games like Dishonored and Prey, shocked fans with the release of Redfall. This co-op open-world vampire shooter was meant to be a new and exciting IP, blending Arcane's mastery of world building with fast-paced action. Instead, Redfall felt like a shell of a game. The development team reportedly struggled with the project, with 70% of the original developers leaving midway through production. The result was a game lacking the depth and creativity Arcane was known for. The combat, a central feature in Arcane's previous titles, felt uninspired, and the open-world design was bland. Players complained about the dull, repetitive mission and the world what felt empty despite its size. To make matters worse, Redfall suffered from technical issues, making the already lackluster gameplay even more frustrating. It was a massive blow to Arcane's reputation and a reminder what even the most talented studios can stumble. Next game is Drive-3R. Once a beloved franchise, Driver was one of the premier driving action games of the early 2000s. However, with Drive-3R, the series took a nosedive what it would never recover from. Aiming to compete with GTA San Andreas, Drive-3R promised a rich, open-world driving experience. Instead, it delivered a buggy, unfinished mess what frustrated players. The game was rushed to meet its release date, resulting in poor controls, off-car physics and an unfinished storyline. Cars would glitch through the environment, missions would fail to trigger, and the AI was ever brain dead or impossibly difficult. The hype surrounding the game, bolstered by a massive marketing campaign, made its failure all the more painful for fans and developers alike. Drive-3R series as a cautionary tale about the dangers of rushing development to meet market expectations. Next game is Lair. Lair was supposed to showcase the power of the PlayStation 3. Developed by Factor 5, the team behind Star Wars Rogue Squadron, this dragon-riding action game had all the potential in the world. But when it finally released in 2007, Lair was widely panned for one major flaw: its motion controls. The game forced players to control the dragon by tilting the PlayStation 3 6-axis controller, which was imprecise and frustrating. Instead of soaring for the skies, players found themselves wrestling with the controls, leading to countless deaths and endless frustration. To make matters worse, Lair had repetitive missions, lackluster graphics, and a story that failed to engage. Despite a later patch that added traditional analog controls, the damage was done. Lair became a symbol of the PS3's early struggles and reminder that flashy technology doesn't always translate to good gameplay. Next game is Medal of Honor Warfighter. In 2012, EA tried to revive the Medal of Honor franchise with Warfighter, hoping to compete with the Call of Duty juggernaut. Unfortunately, Medal of Honor Warfighter did little to differentiate itself from the crowded FPS market, offering a generic military shooter with little innovation. The game's single-player campaign was criticized for its uninspired story, filled with glitches and lacking emotional depth. Even worse, the game was buggy at launch, with countless technical issues plaguing in both the campaign and multiplayer modes. To top it off, the multiplayer experience was shallow and quickly forgotten, in the face of better alternatives like Battlefield and Call of Duty. EA's attempts to revive Medal of Honor ended up killing the franchise for good, leaving Warfighter is a disappointed footnote in gaming history. Next game is Umbrella Corps. Capcom's Umbrella Corps is a perfect example of what happens when a beloved franchise goes in the wrong direction. Released in 2016, Umbrella Corps was a multiplayer-focused shooter set in the Resident Evil universe. But rather than building on the survival horror legacy of the series, Umbrella Corps opted for a generic, uninspired, team-based shooter format. The game was plagued with balancing issues right from the start, with melee weapons being vastly overpowered compared to firearms. The maps were tiny, the models were limited, and the connection to the Resident Evil series felt suspicious at best. Felt superficial at best. To make matters worse, the game was buggy and lacked any real connect to keep players invested. In the end, Umbrella Corps was quickly forgotten, and fans were left wondering why Capcom had even bothered. Sonic the Hedgehog 206 is one of the most infamous failures in gaming history. Released to coincide with the Blue Hedgehog 15th anniversary, the game was intended to be a grand return to form for the franchise. Instead, it became a laughingstock. The game was riddled with bugs, from characters getting stuck in walls to the camera spinning wildly out of control. The physics engine barely worked, resulting in flawed, unpredictable movement, and the level design felt unfinished. Worst of all, the game introduced new characters, like Silver the Hedgehog, whose telekinetic abilities were a chore to use. The story was nonsensical, involving bizarre human-hedgehog romance, and the game's load times were infamously long. Sonic 206 was so bad that it almost killed the franchise, but its sheer infamy has turned it into a cult classic for all the wrong reasons. Finally, we come to Babylon's Fall, a game that many hoped would capture the magic of Nier Automata. Unfortunately, it was far from that. Developed by Platinum Games and published by Square Enix, Babylon's Fall was a live-service action RPG that failed on almost every level. At launch, the game was criticized for its dual combat, repetitive missions, and lackluster graphics. Despite being a live service game, it had almost no connect to keep players engaged. The environments were bland, the enemies were uninspired, and the loot system was frustratingly random. To make matters worse, the game's servers were shut down less than a year after its release due to a lack of players. Babylon's Fall will go down as one of the biggest failures in both Platinum Games and Square Enix histories. And there you have it, 9 of the worst AAA games ever released, from buggy launches to design flaws that crippled the entire experience. These games serve as a reminder that even the biggest budgets can't guarantee success. Which of these games have you played? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more gaming content. See you next time!